Good afternoon. To some, it's still good morning. To others, it's evening time. But we are excited to be here. We have a wonderful show for you today. There's some things going on, and we'll be having a guest. And definitely, as usual, we'll welcome our listening audience. But before we get into all that, let's say greetings to everybody. If you can, share the show. Um, I'm about to try to do the same thing. Go to um, a couple of links out here, Facebook, and see what it's saying. Today, usually Aquino comes on and say it's a bright sunny day where he's at. Today is really bright and sunny for me, so I'm really excited on the weather and how things are going. So we are here to see who can join us, right? Um, we're supposed to be having Mr. George Fahnbulleh joining me today. Um, and the topic we'll be focusing on, well, two topics really. Um, One is Executive Order number 147. I know many of you have heard about it. If you haven't, we will share that with you as well. Um, then the other thing is trust, confidence, you know, faith, whatever, among Liberian entrepreneurs, Liberian business people. That has been a topic that has come up a lot, um, especially since we started trying to do the Liberal Diaspora Equity Fund, where we looking to aggregate diaspora remittances or diaspora funding to invest it. So when people, have that mindset about confidence, about trust, building, working together is a key item for discussion. So that's something we have to discuss. Um, but it's exciting to be alive. It's exciting to be here. Hopefully, things are exciting on your end as well. Um, Business Talk is here to provide context to the business situation, to bring information around the things that happen and how they affect business people, to promote business people, to encourage engagement, you know, um, relationships, partnerships, investment, and everything. Um, we have been joined by our uh, guest. I can call him guest panelist because he'll be here on more times, probably more times than not. Mr. George Fahnbulleh. George, how was your day today?
Good morning. It's early.
I hope you
It's
don't have any sound issues today.
can you can hear me, right?
We still can hear you. That's why I'm going
You
forward. We
still
need
can't
to
hear
have
me.
a
Okay, hold
conversation
on.
with you before we start stuff. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine. You can't hear me, you said?
Not hearing your sound.
Okay. Uh
For a techie,
I can hear you, but
that
I'm not sure.
may give you a difficult
Okay,
time.
hold on. Can
But he will work on it and give me the thumbs up
you hear me now?
when he has audio. He still doesn't have audio.
Can you
Uh,
hear me?
so we keep trying to set the table. I know he'll be listening on what the discussion is. But like we said, today we are going to discuss the whole issue of Executive Order 147. I'm trying to find a link for that executive order.
Hello, 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 hello.
You know, hopefully we don't have to read the entire executive order. Um, George, can you hear me now?
Can you hear me? I can
Yeah,
hear you
I
fine.
think I hear you. Um, so, Executive Order 147 relates to the National Identification Registry, and the national use of the national identification card, because that's a very critical feature of our development. If we
Can you hear me now?
understand what it means, when we talked about um, formalizing our economy, identifying, you know, everybody that's there to be identified, um, being able to really have our data sets um, uniquely identified in terms of individual, our different agencies of government that participate in. Um, I'm looking for this 147, Executive Order 147. Um, George, can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but for some reason my sound's not coming
Your
through.
audio is giving us a hard time here. Um, so George is having some problems with his audio. Hopefully he'll resolve it very soon. Um, for Executive Order 147, I'm trying to find the text so I can read it for all of us to understand. Um, I think it came out on Monday. Did it come out on Monday? I think it came out on Monday. But the essence of that executive order is to ensure that the National Identification Registry takes control over the identification of all individuals and everybody in the Republic be able to have a national identification. That is a critical path that the president has taken, and we really appreciate him um, for doing that. It has huge implications around the country, and especially for businesses, whether small or large. When we look at compliance and you know how they operate, it's essential for businesses to have their identification set where the people who they deal with are known entities. And if they don't have that information, that personal record of a customer, of an individual that can be uniquely identified, there's no way they know who they are really dealing with. Okay, I think I can hear George now.
Me?
George, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Nah, something's wrong with your sound, man. It's really miserable today.
What about this?
Hopefully, you get it.
Can you?
Um, yes. So as I was saying, the National Identification Executive Order 147 that President Boyka put out there a few days ago is very critical to our development as a people. And we need to understand what it means for businesses. We need to understand what it means for individuals. And let me take a minute to go to the Executive Mansion website and pull up the full executive order because people need to understand it. They need to understand the whereas. You know, when they're doing these executive orders, they say whereas this, whereas that. Those are basically the reasoning behind why they should implement the executive order. So let me go to my browser here and type in full text of executive order 147. 147. I know it was on the Executive National website because it was sent to me from there. Um, okay.
Can you hear me now? Hello.
George, are you there now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
George, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, but you can't hear me, obviously.
Something definitely wrong with
All right, hold on. I just shoot.
your audio. Folks are having some technical problems here. And we can't get any sound from George. Okay, here we go. Executive Order number 147. It states mandatory enrollment of all citizens and foreign residents in the use of the National Biometric Identification Card to access all public and private services in Liberia. So it's not limited to government. It includes everybody, public and private. So it says, whereas the national legislature in 2011 repealed PRC Decree 65, which established the National Identification Card System, and in lieu thereof established the National Identification Registry. Whereas the framers were, among other things, mindful that double dipping, illegal migration, and other frauds resulting from impersonation and identity theft continue to undermine the efforts of government to strengthen public and private institutions, provide essential services, and promote the rule of law. And that's the truth. The network is killing me. Um, Then it says, whereas the response to the above challenges was to create the National Identification Registry with a mandate to design, produce, and issue biometric cards, each with a unique identifying number to be called or National Identification Number, NIN, to be the primary government approved identity number for registration of birth, death, passports, immigrant documents, bank accounts, driver's license, social security benefits, education, and other identification documents. So, folks, I hope you understand what that says. The mandate to produce and issue biometric cards, each with a unique identifying number to be called a national identification number, to be the primary government approved identity number. So only the National Identification Registry can issue the identity number for birth, for death, for passports, for immigrant documents, for bank accounts, for driver's license, for social security benefits, for education, and other identification documents. This is far reaching, and we get to that point where this number should be used by all those different agencies. Supported by adequate and appropriate security features to address the challenge of possible fraudulent duplication. Whereas the National Identification Registry is occupied with the implementation of technologies which entails the design, establishment, maintenance, administration, and implementation of a National Identity Registry with a National Biometric Identification System, NBIS, and the administration of Identity Query Portal and e-verification platform and identity for the Republic of Liberia. So the same year that NIR, the National Identification Registry, right, has this responsibility and has all these systems that it's supposed to be working with. Um, Then it says, whereas the NRR Act further provides that biometric data to be submitted by individuals should be collected directly and openly from the individual to whom it relates, and it is mandatory for all citizens. They didn't say people should come in the night and collect their biometrics. They say it should be open. Are we better, George?
Can you hear me?
We still not.
All right, let me try something else.
What you have done, you keep playing around with your system and you messed it up.
Hold on.
Go on your phone and try to get in with your phone. It will probably be the best bet. Finally, no, that's another whereas. There are two whereases. This is one. The LTA, pursuant to Part 3, Section 11Q of the Telecommunications Act of 2007, adopted in 2020, and amended SIM cards RUIM registration regulations, LTA regulations 008, which inter alia required all SIM cards / RUIM issued by mobile network operators, MNOs, in Liberia to be registered using only government issued IDs, electronically verifiable on the National Identification Registry platform. So that means everybody who is going to have a cell phone or to use any of these services by, all these telcos or the mobile network operators must be registered with the National Identification Registry, the NRR. Okay. Whereas on 8th October 2024, the NRR and LTA signed an MOU inter alia for the purpose of establishing a collaborative framework between the parties for the effective implementation of the amended SIM card / RUIM registration bond regular LTA regulation 008, consistent with the Telecommunications Act 2007, the National Identification Registry Act of 2011, and all applicable laws of the Republic. So that requirement for all network operators, mobile network operators, to use and require the National Identification Registry was put into effect along with the the LTA and the NRR, the National Identification Registry, to collaborate on ensuring that happens. Noting that the government of Liberia on May 1, 2024 launched the Digital Transformation Initiative intended to inter alia ensure collaboration and interoperability of ICT systems and platforms and to enhance the digital economy through improved access to government services. We're talking some big things here, noting that the provision of unique digital identity to all citizens and residents of Liberia is a foundational requirement for the achievement of the government of Liberia's digital economy objective. This sounds like something I would have said. Given that the Constitution grants the president executive power, allowing for the issuance of executive orders in the public interest to address urgent matters or specific situations that cannot await the lengthy legislative procedures. And this is the Constitution that's granting President Joseph Boyka this power. It says, now, therefore, I, Joseph Human Boyka Sr., President of the Republic of Liberia, hereby order, Section 1, mandatory enrollment and issuance to all qualified citizens / residents and use of national identification cards to access all services in Liberia, all services, public and private. Under this Section 1, that all citizens and residents within the Republic of Liberia shall enroll into the National Biometric Identification System, NBIS, and obtain a national ID card which shall be used as a primary credential to authenticate, verify, or confirm their identity. So that is the primary means of which anybody can identify your national identification card. Prove your citizenship. Only Liberian citizens should have the Liberian portion of the national biometric identification card. Other foreigners can have their own card, which is different. Obtain or have access to all services for which they are entitled. Establish and enhance compelling collaboration frameworks among central government and private sector entities for the effective implementation of the comprehensive mass enrollment and issuance of citizens into the NBIS. So that means the private sector, the banks, the telcos, other major operators that work in close collaboration with government, they need to establish the framework and most likely a pipeline into the national identification registry, database or system. But also, it may make sense for them to have, for NIR to have a presence at those places that people who don't come with identification are required to get their identification right on site. So there's a lot of collaboration that is necessary. Number two, that all foreign residents and visitors that remain in the Republic of Liberia for a period of 90 days or more shall enroll into the National Biometric Identification System and obtain foreigner ID card. Not citizen. George, we can hear you now.
Can you hear me now? Hello? I don't know what's going on, man. It's not me.
We have somebody in the studio, but they're not showing face. But let's find out if the person in the studio. Can you hear George? Let's have George speak.
Can you hear me now? Who's in studio?
No, sorry, George.
All right, I tell you what, I will come off my phone.
Can you come to us? Studio, can we hear you? Can you make a statement? The person in the studio on vacation too. So we'll continue. So the use of this ID card for foreigners is to authenticate their identity, to prove their residency status in Liberia, and apply for eligible government and private sector services such as mobile SIM cards. Establish and enhance compelling collaborative frameworks through central government and private sector entities for the effective implementation of the comprehensive mass enrollment and issuance of foreign residents into the NBIS. Okay, so this NBIS, this National Biometric Identification System, is the system of record. It's where everybody information will be foreign and Liberian. Section 2, utilizing national identification card for identification purposes in interaction with both public and private institutions in Liberia, and the NIR database identity queries by all government institutions and eligible private sector organizations. 1, that citizens and residents shall obtain and utilize the national ID card for identification purposes in interactions with government entities, application and access to public services, banking, healthcare, education, and all other essential services. So everything goes through your education, whether you want grant from government or whether you getting some kind of social safety net through gender ministry, everybody should be using the system. This should apply to the central government and all its institutional functionaries, particularly. So it applies to everybody, but particularly the Ministry of Education, the National Commission on Higher Education, the West Africa Examinations Council, WAEC, the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning, the Liberian Revenue Authority, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Liberia Telecommunications Authority, the Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Youth and Sports, the Central Bank of Liberia, the Liberia Land Authority, the Ministry of National Defense, National Elections Commission. That one is key, though. Listen, National Elections Commission, Liberia Business Registry, Liberia Intellectual Property Office, Ministry of Justice, the Liberia Electricity Corporation, the Liberia Water and Sewer Corporation, all commercial banks, local financial institutions and insurance companies, all professional licenses. So this separates licensing from identification. So we get into that nuance so people can understand the differences. All institutions in the private sector, particularly mobile network operators, concessionaires, etc. So this is saying this law applies to everybody in terms of utilizing the national identification card. So there's no exception. Section 3. Oh no, but number 3 for this particular section 2, that all public and private institutions shall use the NIR database and identity queries to eradicate the potential for fraud and improve government efficiency, revenue, government service delivery, and development planning consistent with the National Identification Registry Act of 2011 and all applicable laws of Liberia. The governance structure now. This is saying the executive order is to be administered through several structures. One, enrollment, issuance of national identification card, digital card, foreign card, and response to identity queries and e-verification platform. So NIR, in its authority as contained in the NIR Act of 2011, shall enroll all citizens and residents into the NBIS, ensuring the efficient and timely distribution of national and foreign ID cards to eligible individuals and provide responses to identity queries from government of Liberia ministries, agencies, commissions, and private institutions through the Identity Query Portal and e-verification platform, particularly for institutions requiring background checks or know your customer. This is critical. Every ministry and agency needs to be able to plug into the Identity Query Portal for all the identification. Hold on, maybe we have to do George on the phone because it seems like he really wants to participate in this.
Isaac, let's go through the headset again.
Well, you are live.
I think I resolved it.
Okay, let me add you to the stage.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
You haven't resolved it, but you can
Right.
you can be on the phone.
Okay, so how do we do this?
Let's call George and he can participate from the phone. He's loud enough.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you, and I think the audience can hear you. If you can hear George, please let us know. Good morning, Cheryl. If you can hear George, please let us know. And his voice is coming through, so his face can be on. George, can you hear us?
I can hear you just fine.
Wonderful. This should
Okay.
have been the solution we should have used a long time ago.
Right.
Because it works.
So yeah, I've been following what the executive order, and it's almost like the president was channeling me, because over the last 15 years, I've been writing about the need to implement this national identification. And even though we had the national identification, the law in 2011, the law was basically given no teeth.
Toothless. True.
I think the last part that you read is what comes across as really important. The question for us now is how are we going to implement this across government?
Across the country, not just government.
Across the country. I wrote something after the president released this executive order,
right,
thanking him and saying these are the things we need to do. So I've always been a proponent of the National Data Center at LibTelco. Okay. So if the part you read about the queries.
Right. So let's step back before you go to. So let people understand something you just mentioned. You've been writing about this. We have been advocating collectively over the last several years for this to be a reality. Just share your emotions. How do you feel that this executive order is buttressing now a law that was kind of dormant and not being respected?
Well, I think the easiest thing to do is to, instead of trying to reiterate what I said. What I said. I will just say that what I wrote to the president.
It expresses your feelings. The stuff
Yes,
you put on Facebook.
yes. Let me get to it.
So, what I'm trying to get from George is the excitement he feels with this. Because personally,
Okay.
you got it.
Yes, I have it.
Okay, go ahead.
So I said I want to commend, thank, and congratulate President Buckeye for signing Executive Order 147. All citizens and foreign residents to enroll and use the National Biometric Identification Card to access public and private services. The EO will finally bring all identification services in the Republic of Liberia under the National Identification Registry. Be cognizant of the fact that identification and registration are two separate, distinct but related functions. Identification irrefutably establishes who a person is. Registration grants an identified person access to services, public and private, that they are entitled to. The simplest way to think about it is that in cases like a driver's license or voter registration, a driver's license is a certification that a specific identified individual has met all of the requirements to operate a specific class of motor vehicles in the country. That certification can only be conferred by the relevant statutory agency, the Motor Vehicle Division of the Ministry of Transportation. A voter's registration card is also a certification that an identified person has met all the qualifications to be eligible to vote as defined by the Constitution. It then assigns or registers that person to vote at a specific location. The NEC by law, for example, has no authority to produce biometric IDs. The NIR recently published a roadmap for issuing biometric IDs to every eligible person in 24 months at a cost of $30 million. I want to call on the finance minister to immediately freeze all funding for identification services across government and state enterprises until such time that those services can be aligned with Executive Order 147. This will also be a significant step in solving the issue of fraudulent passports by the foreign ministry. The foreign ministry must immediately dismantle any biometric program it runs and transfer the entire function to the National Identification Registry. The NIR should have an office in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. All NASCORP registration systems that issue Social Security numbers must immediately be turned over to the NIR to be managed. There is no need for a new budgetary allotment. The money is already in the system. It has just been cannibalized by the various agencies. For example, the NEC spent $13 million on biometric IDs that should have gone to the NIR. Again, thank you, Mr. President. So that was what I wrote to the president, and it just about covers it.
All right. So the man went into the into the technical side as well in terms of what he was communicating with the president. But in terms of that, some people reactions, to what you wrote was surprise, amazement, wondering where you stand. I mean, what's your thought on that? Because
Where I stand in terms of what?
because people perspective, when you speak to the issues, they think you're against something or you just have drawn a line totally against, it happens to me, it happens probably most people. So just for our listeners to understand, the drive you seek is just a better Liberia as opposed to individual base or just talking to
So,
one person.
so I come from the perspective that no two people are going to agree on everything.
And if they
Where we disagree, we have to express that disagreement. Where we agree, we have to express that agreement and support. Okay? Disagreeing with the president or the government on one issue doesn't mean that a person is anti-government. It means that on this one issue, we don't align. So it's just one of those things that I think Liberians have a very difficult time. It's an intellectual disconnect that Liberians have. They can't seem to look at any two things objectively and say, okay, this is the reason why he disagreed. It's not that he doesn't like the president. Okay, I don't have a reason to not like the president.
And
I
some,
can all
some
say,
people say, I mean, I have a reason to like somebody. Likeness, you know, that's not my business to like, but to stick to the issue. So hopefully, people
right.
can
So
differentiation.
I will put it to you this way. Now that the president has written this executive order, it doesn't mean that I will not be critical if I don't believe it's being implemented correctly. It's not carte blanche for my support.
And that's what people don't understand. Everything is should be issue driven, right? You
Correct.
Say, yes, you know, let's give everybody in Liberia, or like they do sometimes, they're giving grants or money to specific people. Yeah, that's a great idea. But sometimes the devil is in the details. The implementation is poor. It doesn't. The money will not get to those who are supposed to get it. So the same way with this program, the idea is for the National Identification Registry to be the source of all identification and numbers, all identification cards, all inquiries into identification, improving identification. If they do it any way different, it's outside the lines of what this is. So that's why the collaboration within the act is very clear. And we need to understand that people need to do things the right way. They cannot shortcut things. So one of the things I was mentioning there in the act, all the different ministry and agencies that he mentioned, foreign affairs with passport, national social security with social security numbers and stuff. It's clear they got to come to the NIR for those identity numbers. That doesn't mean you can't have passport number. That doesn't mean within
But
the National Social Security database they can have their own identification number, maybe based on different.
the act has always been clear.
It
The NIR Act of 2011 has always been clear. And what it has said is that the number that is produced shall be called the Social Security number. Okay? When we talk about cannibalization, we see that NASCOR is a statutory member of the NIR board. Yet NASCOR has maintained for all this time a separate and distinct identification process when the law says it is this number that needs to be used. So, you know, the fact is NASCOR has a budget and NASCOR should essentially be the biggest customer to the NIR. So whatever money NASCOR is spending on identification,
it should come to NIR.
It should be direct, and this is something that has to happen immediately. Okay. Let me just share with you guys. In July of 2017, I wrote a letter to President Sirleaf when the new person, I think his name was Nangbe, was appointed to the NIR. And one of the things he said is, we're going to have a data center. Okay? So I said to her, I wrote a letter to the president, and the second point I made was, according to information made public by the National Identification Registry, the registry will set up a national biometric data center. Madam President, the government of Liberia spent nearly 10 million US dollars setting up a world-class data center at the Lynn Street offices of Liptelco. The technical capacity of the data center exceeds on orders of magnitude anything the NIR can set up or is needed by the entire government of Liberia. For the NIR, and this is what's critical, and the president It's mentioned in the executive order. I said for the NIR to function as it should, it will need to provide data connectivity, redundancy, 24/7, 365. It can literally never go down. In terms of, in technical terms, this would mean A, providing triple power redundancy in the form of LEC backup generators and a battery farm, a capacity that is already at the telco. Two, providing consistent high-speed internet connectivity to all Liberian government agencies and other parties that need to consume the biometric and or identification numbers. Additionally, there will literally be millions or tens of millions of queries daily to authenticate and verify that data. The capacity of this type only exists at Liptelco. So what we want, what we need to have, what we're talking about here now is the fact that if this is not implemented correctly, it will become a choke point and make the other agencies unable to function. Now I can't hear you now. Can you hear me? Okay. I think you cut the call off. Can you hear me now? Okay. So, but I can't hear you. Remember, we're on the phone, and I think you cut the phone off. So call me back. Oh, you're muted, Isaac. You're muted. Hello. All right, but I was on the phone with him before, and I don't know what happened to Isaac. Let me call him. I got no idea what's going on with it. So what happened to you? You were muted. That's why I couldn't hear you. Damn. I can't stop my camera. I can't unmute. So I'm sorry. You have to keep talking. The show was like 15, 20 minutes. Oh, damn. Okay. Maybe now I can speak through you. Well, I don't know. So ask the people on the show if they can hear me. Or put it in the chat. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. So why don't you go out of the room and come back? Yeah. So, George Toto, can you hear me? That's not good. Well, my guys are barking at somebody. Hold on. Wrigley and Princeton, come here. Come here. Come here, Princeton. I can hear you here. Wrigley and Princeton, come here. I got treats. Come on, Princeton. Come. Come. Come, Princeton. Come. Come on. Come here, buddy. Good boy. Come. Get up. Yes. Okay. Look, you see? You, you, Princeton, look, you on TV. Look, look. You see? There goes Princeton right there. Princeton's a good boy. Yes, Princeton's a good boy. So you want to just step out and step back in, everybody? I mean, I can hear you. I just need to make sure that they can hear me. So Jesus, I got to put my dogs outside. Let me see. All right. So now it says I'm backstage. Okay. So can you hear me? George Toto, can you hear me?
Isaac Tuckbell.
Yeah. Yes. So okay. Okay. So I'm getting this reverberation. So where was I? I was saying. You were talking about implementation. Yes, I was talking about the implementation. I don't know why. So, what I said was the undertaking of building its own data center is a waste of government money. It's a waste of any government agency, including a central bank, NASCOR, LRA, to even attempt to house a data center when there's already a government data center whose capacity exceeds any need they may have. The safety and security of government data is indeed a national security matter. And as such, the dispersal of government data in the manner as I described above, everybody having their own data center, it exposes the footprint of the government and in the possibility of the compromise of that data. So, this is something that all of these agencies have to be brought to heel. When you talk to people who are in the government, one of the things they will always say, "Oh, guy, Liptelco, they ain't got nothing there." You know why they don't have anything there? Because you people are taking the money that's supposed to go to them and claiming that you're building your own data center. The government has already set up the necessary system, and you've decided purposefully not to use it. Okay, so everything about this executive order, the reason the entire executive order, Isaac, is even necessary is because these people have consistently cannibalized the functions of the service agencies. Are you there? I'm here. Yeah. So, no, I mean, that's just the truth. Like you said, it kind of cannibalized. They are taking away funding for these people. They are taking away resources for NIR, and they have filled NIR. The National Elections Commission, the National Social Security, in terms of letting the NIR do its job, and they get whatever they need in terms of identification number from it. So we can just hope that. Yeah, but Isaac, we even it's not just the NIR. It's also Liptelco. This distribution, this access to the data from the NIR cannot happen if the data that the NIR has right now sits at the NIR. They don't have the bandwidth. They can't guarantee that they will be up 24/7. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Okay, that's why so this thing has to be looked at holistically. We got to see where the gaps are. We got to see how we can fill them in. Well, that's the major gap. It's something we own. If the NIR says today that we are prepared to fulfill the mission, the question will still become, where are you housing your data? And can you guarantee that everybody who needs to do a query will be able to do it 24/7? And the answer to that is no. Right now, it's definitely no. It's no. Because let's say, for example, 5 or 6 banks trying to access at the same time, 6 or 7 ministry, and individuals who may want to verify identity from different resources. Right. Before I will be talking about load testing. So, but let's take it one step further, right? Mm-hmm. The drivers, the Ministry of Transportation, that issues driver's licenses. Once they've issued a driver's license, they now need to have a query portal where people can query somebody's driver's license. You see, as soon as we establish that the foundationality, I'm not even sure if that's a word, but that's a word for today. As soon as we establish the foundationality of the NIR, then it becomes assumed and accepted that everybody who has a driver's license has gone through the process and also has a national identification number.
Right.
Okay,
Because
so now,
get a driver's license without a national identification.
right. So now that means that the driver's license, for example, can be used as an identification because you can always query the driver's license database, and they can provide you whatever records or backlink to the NIR's data that they have verified.
Right. You also have a portal that people can inquire to.
Yeah, agreed. But my point is, this now also means that transportation needs to move its servers to LibTelco.
That's a separate conversation.
No, but it's not a separate conversation. It's the same conversation.
No. I'm saying in terms of the law, yes. In terms of implementation, it's a discussion I have to be had.
Listen, you know how I operate. If you don't do this, it's not going to work. So it's not a discussion. It's not optional.
Yeah, but just doing it, nobody can do it in a vacuum.
The minister of finance who disperses funds to these people, he has to step in and say, this is what's going to happen now.
Yeah, Judge, that's beyond the point. Yes, we all agree that's what is supposed to happen. For it to happen, those conversations have to be had, those integrated teams got to be developed, and they got to do the work.
Well, we also have a chief information officer.
And that's an interesting conversation we're going to come to.
He should be the one driving this coordination along with the Minister of Finance.
It was not mentioned in the executive order, but
Yeah.
it is something I think the president should
Isaac,
Yeah.
within his remit, this executive order falls under him, whether it's mentioned or not. The implementation.
Again, I believe that position is a position the president should make very public and empower that position to be able to have his finger for now, since it's a mail, his finger on everything technology in Liberia.
I agree.
It's a necessity.
I agree. And so, again, he has to be the focal coordinator of all of these things. Literally, the way I see it is, nobody can tell him no.
Well, it depends now.
It depends on what? It depends on what? Yes, he's the chief technology officer, and he's the chief in regards to the implementation of EO 147. When he draws up his plan, that's the plan.
He needs to drive it.
Okay,
Yes.
because what I have said again, going back to NASCORP, NASCORP is a statutory member of our board. They sit on the board, but they refuse to use the services of the NIR. And they will give you every excuse as to why they can't use it, even though the law says it is the NIR that will create the social security numbers.
And that's standard.
So what is the rationale for them refusing to use it?
That undermines standard. The person who got the political clout, unfortunately, the government is run politically. Instead of the mandate, supported by the Constitution and running, institutions in government that way, is run on who has the clout, who has the power, quote unquote, who has the money at the time.
Well, the president has issued an executive order that says that this has to stop. So I really want to see what their position is.
It shouldn't be a long time finding out. The National Identification Registry head, hopefully he's in line with the CIO in the person of Mr. Sheikh Sharif.
Because at the end of the day, Isaac, the NIR, the NASCORP is a customer of the NIR. Whatever specific data requirements NASCORP has for the NIR, they transmit this to say, this is what we need you to collect. So I don't really see why this hasn't been done. The last piece I would like to talk about is the fact that, at least to the best of my knowledge, this NIR data is being managed by people from India. And so, again, we will call on Mr. Sharif to make sure that all of that data is brought in-house. All of the management, if there's source code to be owned, we need to own that source code, but no Liberian personal identifying data should be transmitted to India.
Or down in India, just out of the country.
Out of the country, but with respect to the NIR specifically.
Right.
Okay, so this is a process that I believe will take maybe 6 months, but all of those things need to happen.
That's being optimistic.
Well, Isaac, listen, it's only a matter of exercising the political will to make these things happen.
Yeah, but I'm saying even if you have the will, you have the biggest nod of the president support you. It takes work to implement these things. It takes
Agreed.
knowing what they are doing to
Agreed.
implement these things.
And
There are
so,
a lot of moving parts to this law. So it's not as to the law and the executive order. So it's not as simplistic.
well, so again, let's put together. Let's talk with the CIO. Let's put together a plan of action and a timetable. You are a project manager, okay?
Just to him,
Right. But they can start a transition plan for that Social Security data. One, to be brought in house. They can start that immediately. They can figure out from the telco what the telco needs to co-locate their data at LibTelco.
Yeah, we got the audio is poor, so I don't know. I think we should just stop for the day and do the show. Redo the show because.
All right, we should do it next week.
Yes, between now and that time, there can be more publicity about this. More people can get sensitive to what the issues are.
And maybe we can invite the chief information officer.
That could be a possibility. It would be a good thing to do. So let's see, and hopefully I'll be in the motherland by that time, and let's see what we can do.